Your great question is always, what is my next action? What is my next action? What do I do now?
Hey there! It's hard to find good help for many people today. With so much information, it's easy to feel overwhelmed and that you don't have any way to sift through the noise. Luckily, motivational speakers can help. Subscribe to us for endless motivation.
Recently, Kenny from Facebook asked me, how do you keep your cool and stay motivated when things are not going badly around you? Well, here's some tips for me to stay motivated when times are rough. First of all, remember the natural tendency of human beings when they have a reversal of any kind is to blame someone else for the problem. And so the starting point of staying in control mentally and emotionally is refuse to blame anyone else. The magic words are the words, I am responsible. I am responsible. Even if you didn't do anything to cause the problem, you are responsible for how you behave. Now here's a second point, is when things go against you, when you have problems or difficulties, everybody's watching you to see how you behave. So the rule is, be cool, be calm, just be relaxed. I wrote a whole book on this called, I was going to call it Crunch Time, and they called it Crunch Point. But it basically said this, is when something goes wrong, there's several things that you can do to stay in control. Number one, resolve to stay calm. Number two is get the facts. Sometimes when things go wrong, when they have problems, you don't have enough facts. Sometimes it's not really a problem at all, or in most cases it's not as big a problem as you thought. And the way you do that is by asking questions. Ask questions, say, what exactly happened here? Who did what? When did it happen? How did it happen? And then, how do we know that it happened? Another way to deal with problems is to write it down and say, what exactly is the problem that I'm concerned about? We find that if you can use your brain to write down the problem on paper, in most cases it begins to solve itself. Once you've written it down, you say, all right, what are all the possible solutions to this problem? What could we do now to minimize the damage? What could we do now to take advantage of the situation? Is it really a problem? Sometimes when you have a reversal, it's nature's way of telling you, don't go in this direction. 80% of products that are introduced by the smartest marketers in the world fail every year. And what they do is they learn, if this didn't work, maybe something else will. And by trying something different, often they develop a product or service or strategy that makes them a great success. And communicate with others. Tell everybody else what is going on. The very act of communicating with other people keeps you calm and more thoughtful. Finally, make a decision. What action are you going to take immediately to solve this problem, to resolve this difficulty? Remember, successful people, leaders, are intensely action-oriented. Your great question is always, what is my next action? What is my next action? What do I do now? And then finally get so busy solving the problem and bringing about a solution that you don't have time to think about it or worry about it anymore. This is one of the great strategies throughout all of history, is get so busy taking action that you don't have time to worry or be concerned about what other people may be thinking or feeling.
And the next verse goes like this, and so in the strife of the battle of life, it's easy to fight when you're winning. It's easy to slave and starve and be brave when the dawn of success is beginning. But the man who can meet despair and defeat with a cheer, there's the man of God's choosing. The man who can fight to heaven's own height is the man who can fight when he's losing. Carry on, things never were looming so black. But show that you haven't a cowardly streak, and though you're unlucky, you never are weak. Carry on, brace up for another attack. It's looking like hell, but you never can tell. Carry on, old man, carry on. By morning, we had only made 150 miles, and we were all exhausted and a bit tense. There was an abandoned army fort in the middle of the desert, and we had hoped to shelter there from the midday sun in one of the empty buildings, and now it was too late. The sun had begun its implacable climb up the eastern sky. Still, we hurried on. So fortunately, you couldn't get lost crossing the Sahara in the daytime. The track across the desert is marked by black 55-gallon oil drums located every 5 kilometers, which is exactly the curve of the Earth's surface. You can always, as you drive, you can always see two oil barrels, the one you just passed and the one you're heading for. So all you have to do to cross the biggest desert on earth is to take it one oil barrel at a time. Of course, traveling at night, if you wander from the piste, if you wander from the track, you can get lost in the desert and drive until you run out of gas. And many people have died that way. As we would approach each oil barrel, it was really neat. As we approach each oil barrel, we come to this oil barrel, we just come parallel with it. The next oil barrel would just pop up on the horizon. And as we would pass this oil barrel, the one behind us would fall off the horizon, as though it had been shot in a shooting gallery. Really, really neat. So in the years since then, I've found that you can achieve almost any goal you set for yourself if you simply take it one oil barrel, one step at a time. If you go as far as you can see, you will then see far enough to go further. Now the sun really became the enemy. It sat on the horizon like a big, evil, yellow cat, and then it began to rise inexorably, getting hotter and hotter as we raced south. The temperature grew hotter and hotter. Finally, at 9:30 a.m., it reached 110 degrees Fahrenheit, and the vehicles began coughing and stalling. We signaled between the two vehicles and agreed to stop and wait out the heat, right there in the middle of that 25,000 square mile parking lot. You never felt so small in your entire life. I'll never forget that day. Hour after hour, we sat in our vehicles like sitting in a bake oven, prostrate from the pounding heat of the sun that reached 140 degrees Fahrenheit by noon and seemed to hang there, seemed to stay there forever. We drank quart after quart of water, our throats going bone dry minutes after gulping down a full canteen. It was worse outside, so we just stayed in the vehicles and suffered hour after hour. Finally, as the afternoon wore on, the temperature slowly began to fall. By 4 p.m., it was down to 105 degrees. When it finally got below 100 degrees Fahrenheit at 5 p.m., we started on. But now we were racing the clock. We only made about 200 miles in the last almost 24, and we still had 300 miles to go. There was a small oasis, an army post on the other side of the desert, and we knew we had to get there before the midday sun caught us again. We hadn't slept since Thursday morning. It was now Friday evening. We pushed on over the desert, but the Germans' vehicle kept breaking down. All night, exhausted, we worked to get the Volkswagen bus with the Germans across to the other side. We were both desperate and scared. We knew that we could not last another day. Our water was almost gone. When the sun rose slowly on Saturday morning, we were still struggling with the Germans' vehicle. Finally, at 9 a.m., with 20 miles to go, their vehicle broke down for the last time. We quickly abandoned it. We loaded the 5 Germans in the back of the Land Rover and headed for the fort and the oasis. An oasis, by the way, is a place where there's one well with a bucket. That's an oasis. It was further than we thought, but we made it just before the heat forced us to stop. We were all aware of how close we had come to actually dying in the desert. Those Arabs knew what they were talking about. So we sat out the heat that day in a native hut near the fort, and then we went back that evening and towed the Volkswagen bus into the army post. We had done it. We were over the Sahara. We hadn't slept for 2.5 days, but we had made it. Now, I won't go into the details of what happened on the rest of our trip across Africa, except to say that we did finally get to Johannesburg 2 or 3 months later. I won't trouble you with how we had to cross 2 countries illegally with the police and the army on orders to shoot to kill if they saw us. And I won't go into how we were almost killed under the boots and rifle butts of a mob of soldiers in the Congo. That was another close one. And I won't talk here about the experience of meeting and working with Dr. Albert Schweitzer in his hospital village in Lambrini. No, I'll wrap up this story here by telling you what I learned about life and success in the Sahara crossing.
hypnotized. What's up is down, what's left is right. Chasing stars and holding you. I can't see the end, but we'll see it through. Times don't fly too high. Be sure to keep the ground in sight. Fly forever if you keep it tight. Love the world but keep the sky on your mind.